The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason along with Sue Kalinsky. This is the show where we talk about everything happening in the world of pop culture. Great guest today, stand-up comic, actor Byron Bowers. His latest project is Lady in the Lake, which is now streaming on Apple+. Sue Ballou, what's happening with you?
Well, I had day one of training for number 3 triathlon on Sunday.
That's not coming up until like the fall,
No.
right?
November 3rd.
November the 3rd. So you're training way in advance, right?
Well, a couple of months.
Well, and on my training front, I've got a torn rotator cuff.
Oh, my God.
And I've got a strained hip flexor. And it only affects my walking and my dominant hand. So that's okay.
Only?
That's all. Walking and my dominant hand.
And was this from just too much strain? I mean, just strenuous exercise? I mean, what do you say to your trainer? Like, hey, man, what's going on? How did this happen?
Well, here's the thing. I've been training more by myself and less with my trainer because my trainer kind of taught me how to work out, right? He taught me what exercise, all that stuff. So I've been working out on myself a little bit, and this is the result. So I'm back to the trainer tonight. See if we can work some of this stuff out. So I just got back from New York.
Mm-hmm.
Had a fantastic trip. Saw 3 shows, Sue. I saw one called Stereophonic, which won the Tony for Best Play this past year. And it's very, very loosely. No, I will say somewhat loosely based on the story of Fleetwood Mac.
Right.
I mean, it is Fleetwood Mac. I don't know how they're getting away with this because this is definitely the Fleetwood Mac story, but it's fantastic. It's on the long side. It's about 3 hours and 5 minutes. So it's a little bit long, but really rich characters. The woman who plays the woman who's supposed to be Stevie Nicks is just fantastic. And Will Brill, who has been here on the show and won the Tony Award for this, was fantastic in it. So Stereophonic is one show that I really, really liked.
And did they sound exactly like Fleetwood Mac?
Very Fleetwood Macian when they actually performed.
So this is a situation where you say, wow, did they have to get permission to tell the story?
All the names have been changed.
Yeah.
The names of the songs have been changed. They're not using the actual songs. It's almost like they're just far enough away from Fleetwood Mac to be legally okay.
It's like doing a musical about Bruce Springsteen and naming the band the D Street Band.
Yeah, no, it's totally the same thing.
You know?
You're absolutely right. So anyway, it's a great show if you get a chance to see it. The Outsiders was fantastic, a terrific musical with really cool staging. There's a really big fight scene with the lights flashing on and off. They've got rain, they've got gravel on the ground. It's like super cool looking. It's a really good story. Of course, I grew up on the novel, which later became the movie. And S.E. Hinson was the author of that. And it's a great, great stage adaptation. It's produced by Angelina Jolie. So that was great. And then Oh Mary is sort of the sensation of Broadway right now. It just moved in from off-Broadway. Mm-hmm. It is the story of Mary Todd Lincoln. Only it's I'm trying to think how to say this. It's 2024. It's a non-binary actor who was born as a man who is playing Mary Todd Lincoln, and she is a hard drinking, obnoxious, loud, rude cabaret singer. Okay? This is what Mary Todd Lincoln is. Then Abe Lincoln has got like this, he's gay. He's just flat out gay.
My God.
And he is like having an affair with one of the kids that works in the White House, one of the guys that works in the White House, I guess. Like
a page.
Oh yeah, like a page, exactly right, like a
Okay.
page. And the whole thing is just ridiculous, farcical, funny, outrageous, really, really good. So, Oh Mary, I think is going to run for a while, and I'd be surprised if this actor doesn't wind up winning for non-binary. I guess choice between actor or actress.
So you think the ancestors of the Lincoln family are not very happy about this?
I would imagine. Now, this is based on fact. I went back and looked on it. Based loosely on fact. So Mary Todd Lincoln did develop a serious drinking problem after the death of one of their children.
Okay.
And Abe Lincoln there is a lot of evidence that has shown that he may have been gay. So they've taken these little nuggets and they've turned it into this ridiculous farce, and I strongly recommend it. It's called Oh Mary. So, Sue, we are into the fall movie season, and I decided what we should do is look at 1 month. This is sort of the first month of the fall and the movie season, and it is the month of October. And we talked about what movies sort of jump out and grab us for this year. And for me, I got to start with Joker Full Adieu, I believe is the way to pronounce that, from Warner Brothers. It's coming out October the 4th. This is a sequel to Joker, starring Joaquin Phoenix reprising his role and Lady Gaga joining the cast as Harley Quinn. Catherine Keener, Brendan Gleeson, both in the cast now. And this is the story of Arthur Fleck, who's now a patient at a mental hospital, and he meets a music therapist played by Lady Gaga, and they fall in love and start performing. So it's a psychological thriller / musical. Who's not in for that? I mean, that sounds fascinating.
Sounds amazing. I love that Lady Gaga joined this crazy, crazy journey. You know?
Yeah,
she
absolutely.
is so perfect. Yeah, I'm totally in. And I didn't know that Catherine Keener is in it. She's one of my all-time favorites.
Oh, I love Catherine Keener, yeah. So I saw Lady Gaga at the Bruno Mars concert. I went to see Bruno Mars for the first night of the Intuit Dome, and during the encore, Lady Gaga came out because she's got a brand new song with Bruno Mars, and they did it together. I think it's called If the World Ends Today. I think that's the name of the song. It's something like that. It's very much a kind of a 60s, early 70s sound. It's very, very good. But yeah, I am all in for this. Todd Phillips, tremendous director, really cool concept. Do you realize that the character Joker now has 2 Oscar wins and another nomination? So Jack Nicholson nominated for the old Tim Burton, for our Joel Schumacher or Tim Burton. I don't recall which. But Nicholson got nominated. Heath Ledger won. Joaquin Phoenix won. What do you think it is about this role that makes it so awards that gathers this much attention, that makes it this awards worthy?
Well, I just think that it is such a difficult role to play without it being a caricature. I mean, both actors just lived it so deeply, and it's so dense and troubling, and I don't know too many actors who actually could pull this off. Seriously,
Yeah,
I mean,
very, very twisted character who doesn't know the difference between right and wrong. And I think we had that thing a couple of weeks ago where it was like, it's really just Taxi Driver in makeup. I mean, that is true. This would be Taxi Driver Gets a Girlfriend. That would be the way to describe Joker Full Adieu. And I do not speak French, so that could be right or that could be wrong. So that one is coming out October the 4th. Sue, you've got one called Brothers.
Brothers. There's not a lot of information about it, but it stars James Brolin. What's his name? Not James Brolin.
Josh Brolin.
Josh Brolin. Let's get the two of them.
The other
confused.
Brolin. Yeah.
The other Brolin, the father Brolin. So Josh Brolin and Peter Dinklage play fraternal twins.
Ah, interesting.
And who else is in it? Brendan Fraser is in it. Glenn Close is in it, and Emmett Walsh is in it.
Oh,
so
I
the
love
story,
Emmett Walsh. Yeah.
The story basically it's about reformed criminal who is Brolin. He's trying to go straight in his life. He reunites with his family. And he's with his twin brother, which is such a crazy.
It's so funny.
It's such a crazy pairing, and honestly, I'm in the throes of Game of Thrones right now. So anything Peter Dinklage does, I want to see because
absolutely
he is my favorite character in that series.
He's great.
He's great, and he's hysterical, and there's poignancy too. But he's got the best lines. Anyway, and it's basically he gets together with his family, with his brother, with his overbearing mother, who's Glenn Close, and they try to kind of heal their severed family ties. So I'm sure it's kind of this like criminal romp.
Criminal
romp.
They should use that on the poster. That's a good critics quote.
So, but I like, again, there's not a lot of information about it, but just the fact that these guys are in it, and just to see Brolin and Dinklage as fraternal twins is worth the price of admission.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. By the way, a little story about Peter Dinklage. So,
story about Peter Dinklage?
Oh, I mean, it is a little story about Peter Dinklage. That's okay. So we were struggling at our theaters in Palm Springs, and along comes a movie called The Station Agent. It stars Patricia Clarkson, Peter Dinklage, and Bobby Cannavale. It was the only thing that kept those theaters open. The movie The Station Agent literally kept the movies open. So I will always be grateful to Peter Dinklage for that. All right, next movie, we both got it on our list for October. It's called Saturday Night. It's from Sony. October the 11th is the date. It's co-written and directed by Jason Reitman. Thank You for Smoking, Juno, Up in the Air. He did Ghostbusters Afterlife, of course, which is fitting because his dad did all the Ghostbusters movies. Biographical drama about the very first night of Saturday Night Live. So you are in on this completely.
Totally in on it. And, I remember the first time I saw it. It was just like, I thought it was a joke because I came into the show. I didn't see it from the very beginning of the show. Yep. I saw it during one of their parody commercials, and I'm watching it like, this can't be a real commercial? This is crazy. Yeah. And then found out it was Saturday Night Live because no one knew about it. None of my friends knew about it. There wasn't a lot of buzz about it, especially the way you have buzz about things today.
Yeah.
So we just happened to stumble upon the TV, just happened to be on at my friend's house before we were going out. And there it was. And it was like, whoa. So I'm totally in. I mean, I've been watching the show ever since I'm a teenager.
Yeah. I've been watching it for 50 years. It's hard to believe it's been 50 years, right? This is Gabriel LaBelle, who was so good as young Steven Spielberg in The Fabelmans. That was basically Steven Spielberg. And he's playing Lorne Michaels. And this is a really cool ensemble cast. Nicholas Braun from Succession is playing, and I don't understand this. He's playing both Andy Kaufman and Jim Henson.
What? They ran out of money to get another actor?
Hey, Braun, you do Henson too.
That's
Cooper,
bizarre.
Yeah, it is weird. Cooper Hoffman from Licorice Pizza. He plays, of course, Philip Seymour Hoffman's son plays Dick Ebersol. J.K. Simmons plays Milton Berle. And Matthew Rhys plays George Carlin. And the cool thing about this is it's told in real time as Lorne Michaels and the original cast get ready for that episode, the very first one. And apparently, from the trailer, it looks like NBC or somebody was rooting against them, wanted them to fail, and they succeeded against all odds. So that is that movie. It's called Saturday Night. It's from Sony, and it will open everywhere October the 11th. So that's definitely on my list. Now, Sue, you've got something here called Black Box Diaries.
This is a documentary. I'm a big documentary fan, and it's a very dark but a very powerful and important story about Shiori Ito, who wrote her memoirs about this incident that happened. She's a journalist, and she met with Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's biographer. His name is so hard to pronounce his name, Noriyuki Yamaguchi. She had dinner with him, and he sexually assaulted her. And she went after him. And it was, there's like footage of her with her friends, and she directed it as well. And it was a very dangerous thing for her to do in Japan. Different than it being about a movie executive,
right.
Going against Harvey
Weinstein.
Going against Harvey Weinstein was dangerous in a way that it could have hurt your career. But going against someone who had ties to the Prime Minister of Japan, was very dangerous waters that she was in, and they wanted to put her in jail. But they completely dropped the case, and she came out victorious in all of this. And I just, Time Magazine named her one of the most influential people in 2020 for her impact on the Me Too movement. So it just sounds like it's a very important, and I'm just really thrilled to get to see it.
Will you let me know how that is?
Not interested?
Tough subject.
Well, I mean, you've watched things. You've watched movies about the Me Too movement here, haven't you?
I have. Yes, I have.
Now that's a movie. It's different, but I would think it would be so much more compelling to actually see the real person in it. So
I'm guessing I probably have to read that movie.
Here we go.
With the subtitles. Sorry.
No subtitles, Steve.
Nope, exactly. All right, my last one is called Rumors. It's from Bleecker Street. And there are certain companies that always put out really, really good titles. Companies like Searchlight and Bleecker Street and A24 and Neon. And these are all, they release really high-end stuff. Focus, I should mention Focus. A lot of the Academy Award movies come out from those companies. So this is Bleecker Street, October the 11th, limited release. It's called Rumors. It's a satire. It's a black comedy from Canadian director Guy Maddin and directors Evan and Galen Johnson. And it's the story of a meeting of all the leaders of the G7. They all get together, and somehow they get lost in the woods, and they cannot find their way back to wherever they're having their meeting. So they're just lost. Kate Blanchett plays Hilda Ortmann, Chancellor of Germany. Alicia Vikander plays Celeste Spruill, Secretary General of the European Commission. Charles Dance plays the President of the United States. And then the Prime Minister of Canada, President of France, Prime Minister of the UK, leaders from Italy and Japan. They all get lost in the woods. And they cannot find their way back. And I just think as a premise, this is fantastic. It reminds me a little bit of that one episode of Hacks this year.
Yep.
Where Gene Smart and Hannah Einbinder got lost in the woods, couldn't find their... This is like the most powerful people on the planet all lost in the woods. And I would imagine that we come away feeling that our leaders are hopeless and ineffective and ineffectual and incompetent. Which sounds like fun.
Life imitates art.
Exactly right. So it also reminds me, by the way, of that Armando Iannucci picture, In the Loop. Do you remember that movie?
Yes, I was actually thinking the same thing when I read about the movie.
Yeah. In the Loop is a great movie. The cast is so good, and he, of course, went on to do Veep, so he knows what he's doing. All right, so there's some movies in October for you, and it should be a good month. And we hope that when we do November, we've got even more cool titles, because we will, because we're to that time of year where they release all the Oscars. Oscar bait, as one likes to call it. All right, here we go. Our guest today is a stand-up comic and actor. As a comic, he has done Late Night with Jimmy Kimmel, also an acclaimed comedy special for FX. As an actor, he has appeared in films like Honey Boy and on television series like The Chi. His latest project is the limited series Lady in the Lake, now streaming on Apple Plus. Byron Bowers joins us. Byron, thank you so much for coming on, man. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
So we love Lady in the Lake. It is such a great show. You're great in it. The show is based on the novel by Laura Lippman. It's set in 1966 Baltimore, story of a woman who becomes obsessed with two separate murders, and you play Slappy, who is the husband of one of those victims, and we'll talk about that. So Lady in the Lake is from writer-director Alma Har'el, and you have now worked with her 3 times, your FX comedy special, Honey Boy, and Lady in the Lake. I think those are the 3.
Yeah.
And there is both a romantic connection here and a creative connection. Describe that.
I don't know. Like we met online probably 3 years before Honey Boy, and she told me she was a filmmaker, and I was just like, oh, okay, cool, because everybody in LA does something, so I just was like, we could have been
another filmmaker.
Yeah, another filmmaker, and it would sell drinks on the weekend. You know what I mean? And then we went to, she's like, I got to go to New York to the Tribeca Film Festival. You ever been to Tribeca before? And I was like, nah, I ain't never been to any film festival before. And then I went. And then when I got there, that's when I realized, like, oh, she's a real filmmaker.
She's buying drinks. She's not selling drinks.
No, she's not selling drinks. And then I was like, wait, what's a filmmaker again? And she was like, you write it, we make films. And I was like, your shit said you were a director. You got to put filmmaker on it. So I'm going to get
Now, she kind of wrote, did she write this role for you in Lady in the Lake?
Yeah. She spotted it off. This character wasn't in the book, and she wrote it. And I think it's like good observation on what a comedian's life is like. And I consulted, produced on it, so I was able to like help narrate, what's that like for real. Like some of the darkness and the edginess that come with that lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, I watched some of your stand-up, and I actually watched your first set that you ever did on Late Night on Colbert.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, the minute you walked out on stage, it was like, all right, I know who this guy is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you were just reeked of confidence from the moment of like howling with the band, because I used to do stand. I did stand up for like 30 years. Decades before you started.
The good days, huh? You caught the
decades. Oh yeah, late 70s.
Wow.
70s. So, just the idea of.
By the way, I want to point out you did it in the late 70s. You're not in your late 70s.
Thanks for the clarification.
Just
and
wanted
if
to make that
anybody
clear.
thinks I'm in my late 70s, I really need a lot of help. My cosmetic surgeon isn't doing a good job. So, but the idea of coming out on stage, kind of having a little riff a little bit with the band, and then just going right into your set. And what I marveled so much about you is that you took on a subject. You talked about schizophrenia in your act, and I know your father had or has it, and you disarm the audience with making a very, 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 very funny joke about the hardest part about schizophrenia is spelling schizophrenia, which is just hysterical. And I feel that when a comedian is able to take a subject that is very sensitive and then hit the audience with something that is so funny about something so dark, you could take them anywhere. They'll go anywhere with you.
Agreed. I mean, it took a long time to get to that point also, right? It took a lot of no's to get to that yes. But in those no's, it's something you have to accept, you know? And with my, journey, I just accepted that I wasn't the super, happy, whatever, like me type of comic. So I had to, ask myself why. Because comedy is based on relatability. And I was like, well, I'm just going to talk about why I don't relate to people. And then there was a shift on who I related to as a comedian. And you find out like, oh yeah, these are people you relate to over here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, well, one thing I wanted to say is that when I first started, Silver Friedman, who is Bud Friedman's ex-wife, I don't know how much you know about her, but she took over the club after their divorce, and she took over the New York club. And one thing she instilled in every comedian was to just speak their truth. And that's the thing about stand-up. It doesn't matter that you're not, maybe the likable guy. You got to be who you are up there and own it. And
Agreed.
That to me, and that's when I see a comic that just owns who they are, it's magic.
And I when I say not likable, I mean it in a way like I am likable because I wouldn't be able to get away with the subject matter. But I mean, I wasn't like the jolly, oh, let's go party with this guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm the other one, who do I call when I need a ride home from jail?
Right. Yeah.
So what was it like filming the stand-up sequence in Lady in the Lake?
It was cool to film as a comedian from the late 60s and embody that at that time period, which before the 70s, where comics like Carlin and Pryor and, Lenny Bruce, was starting to let their hair down and talk about their truth, the things that matter to them, which might necessarily, it might not be the bar conversation you want to have over drinks, or it might be actually, but it definitely was more personal stuff. And since I felt I was aligned with that, it just made, a perfect cocktail, so, but then showing the life of somebody who chooses to follow their dreams, which I've experienced before, and the sacrifices that come with that when it comes to family and those things of people who have expectations of you somewhere else. So it was cool, I felt like I was able to step into that world because a very important moment in the lineage of stand-up.
Yeah. So you worked with Alma 3 times. What does a female director give you that you may not get from a male director?
I don't necessarily know on that end. I think because it depends on the personality, I think, of each director. I know what Alma specifically, she gives you the freedom. And her being my opposite, she could be more emotional when it comes to certain things, and she can draw that out of a character, and visually make everything sound good, look good, and feel good. So, and then with my personality, I think with females, I'm a little bit more comfortable around and vulnerable around females than around males.
No, that's interesting.
Which allows for the intimacy, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
totally. Yeah.
Absolutely. By the way, you
I don't think a
mentioned
dude never seen my toes before, but I know a female has seen my toes.
You mentioned she makes it look good. Her visuals on this show are so powerful and crazy and creative and like nothing I've seen. Like episode 1, I think of those gigantic heads sort of bobbing down the street in that parade. And then Cleo at the end singing Feeling Good on the float in that same, I just mean so original and unique. You know what I'm talking about?
Agree. Because if you was to look at it on paper, it had to be crazy, you know. But I think a lot of visionaries are like that. You know, Disney was like, I want to make this mouse talk and be ahead of this whole world. And people, man, you crazy, you know. But sometimes, even working with Alma, I'll be like, what? Wait, what? You want to do what? But then you see the end result, and he's like, oh, that's what you was talking about? Oh, okay, that's all right. That's amazing. But I didn't see that, you know, at first. And I think that's a problem sometimes that artists like that have in this industry, but they have to keep proving themselves. Even me myself with some of the dark humor that I do is just, you have to get these people to trust you, and you have to get these people to trust you on a bigger scale. But by that time, you really need to kind of know what you're doing. So I think that's why, you know, me and her do well together, because she gets it, you know, and then I trust her to exploit it and bring the best version of that. So only she could create a character like Slappy that's based on like some of my real life and some of our observations of my real life, you know.
Yeah, what was so impressive about this series was all of the genres that crossed. I mean, it was noir, it was you know, like it was historical, it was fantasy. It just had so much. It had so much depth to it, and even like the dream sequences. There were times where I kind of like was like, is this a dream? Is this real? Like it really kept you on your toes with what the hell is going on here. But the music was insanely great. I mean, Que Sera, Sera with Sly and the Family Stone rendition. I mean, the last time I heard that song was Doris Day. I mean, it was just really smart and compelling choices, I thought.
It's trippy, man. That's all I can say. Is like it is one of those microdose moments, right, where the lines of two different realities bleed together. And I think you have to, you know, have done that, whether through meditation or accident or whatever, to see what these different realities look like, you know. Being a son of a schizophrenic father, you start to question the lines also, because especially you didn't know that they were ill, but then they shared your point of view on certain things about the world.
Yeah. So your dad's still alive? Is he still with us?
He's with us, but he's in the ground, but you could go like lay on him and stuff.
Oh,
like that.
Got it. Okay. I just wanted to make sure, because my dad, also, he was bipolar 1.
Okay.
He was super, super difficult and out of control a lot of the time, or he was either out of control or in bed. It was one of those two things. And I wonder I know for me, one of the things that goes through my head is I don't want to be my dad. I don't want to go down that road. Yeah. Do you ever have that feeling yourself?
Oh, I teeter with it. I do have it. So I do take it a day at a time. But I don't say I don't want to go down the road, because I know I'm somewhere on the road. If I don't have it, it definitely affected me. So I'm not.
Yeah. How do you think it affected you? How do you think it affected your comedy and your acting?
I think it comes with a certain type of paranoia that most people have. anyway, you just express it more, you know. And it'll affect my comedy because I see my dad would say stuff about not trusting phones and stuff like that. And then you would go to somebody's house and they got a tape over their laptop cameras and stuff. So it's like the lines are blurred, you know. And you know, I think just having that point of view and just seeing those things of how people would consider normal or off a little bit, it's just shaped it in that way. And you're able to like live within that realm and then take that to your characters and your comedy, you know?
Yeah.
I was on my way to set. And it was so early and I wasn't happy I was on my way to set. You know, I definitely was disgruntled and I seen under the bridge on the couch that somebody threw away. It was a homeless dude sitting there smoking joint with his legs crossed. And he was just laughing and like judging us for being up. And it was the most freeing thing I saw because I remember having that freedom and being much poorer, but now I'm like scrambling to keep this health insurance or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it shapes it in that way, you know, for that lens. The dualism, it adds to it, you know?
Yeah, I want to ask you, just going back to your stand-up a little bit, how much, if at all, I'm sure, you know, comedy, you know, you grow as a comedian, but the kind of things that you talked about in the beginning, when you look back, how much has changed in you as a comedian?
It really hasn't. It was crazy. I was working on a book that I'm coming out with, and my first 2 jokes that I ever written were like dark, and people booed me, you know, for them. I could just deliver these jokes now. One of the jokes was you know, I went to church today for the first time in a long time, and people would clap. And I was like, man, I realized when you was young, you would go to church for different reasons than when you're an adult. Like when you was young, you would go because your parents made you to go. And now as an adult, I go for the holds. And the audience would be like, wait, what? Boo. But I didn't have the confidence to say it now. And when I look back, I already had that spin on the world, but now it's just much more refined of, you know, sometimes this is what goes on in these places that nobody, you know, speak about.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to say one thing about censoring yourself. I did a triathlon a little while ago, and the first one that I did, they take a black magic marker and they write your number, your bib number, on your arm. And I turned to someone who I'd been training with who didn't know me that well. And I said, you know, being Jewish, I'm not very comfortable with this, right?
Well, yeah.
And she kind of like, oh my God. Do you ever feel the need to censor yourself sometimes? Or you just say how you feel?
It depends on certain things I do. Yeah, it depends on what it is. But I do like also making the audience, I also like trolling the audience in a way and getting laughter from them that they don't want to laugh at. You know, they don't want to admit to laughing at these things, but it's an involuntary response. So I'm always looking for that. Or that's what makes me feel good as a comedian, you know. So, you know, I have a few of those Jewish jokes. Myself, you know, they in Israeli. So
yes. So I read a story in the Hollywood Reporter about you, which is cool, right?
Yeah.
And you talked about the Good Vibes Breakfast Club. It's a car community. So, for lack of a better term, how would you describe that?
It started with friends of mine, Jay Ryan and Nicole Ryan. And she had got MS, and they just started going on these drives. They got a 911 and just started with a few cars, and then it just became like, you know, 200-300 cars.
Wow.
It's something very spiritual about the drive because you're in the mountains. There's no cell phone service.
Ugh.
And because of the drive, you have to really be, present.
Right.
It's a sign on that road that says no exceptions. So nature don't care your race, how much money you got. If you don't abide by nature's rules, then it's going to toss you off the cliff.
Yeah.
You go
Yeah.
misbehaving and thinking just because you got a bad car with all this horsepower that you can't, that you can't be disrespectful to the road, then off you go. So it's especially in 2020 when there was no performing, it was a way to perform. Because I don't do cocaine. So it's the next level of like being present, performing, and then refining my performance week to week. And then as you make it to the top, it's a nice community of people from different walks of life with the same interests that you get to talk to.
Yeah, I read that same article and it really made me smile because I know Jay and I knew Nicole. And and I love that we have that connection with the two of them because they're very, very special people.
Nah, it's amazing. It's amazing and it's tragic at the same time, but the strength of a relationship, love, and what Jay did inspired a few of us who grew up without those type of male figures, and you seeing that real time, and it makes you want to step up and be that person yourself.
Yeah, Steve, they both documented the progression of her illness and to the very last day, basically.
Wow.
And it gives me the chills, but just so loving. And even like a couple of days before she was, pretty much gone, she was smiling. He was, she just had such a bright spirit. It's truly amazing, the love that they had for one another.
Yeah, I was there by her bedside. That Tuesday before she passed. And me and Ryan, we just shooting jokes off at one another, laughing, what I mean? The people who would be crying, they'll look up, they'll be, oh, I'm sorry, back to what she was doing,
Yeah, right.
But then again, that was your truth, right? In those moments with him, right?
Yeah. Because I've sat beside my dad bedside and I see how, these energies would be. And sometimes you need to bring light into these situations and remind people we still here,
Mm-hmm. Yep. So some big news, you are joining the Marvel Universe in the new Wonder Man series for Apple Plus. So what's it like to be part of the MCU? That's like a gigantic deal, right?
Yeah, I think it's crazy. It's such a big thing that you're a part of. Like I feel like I'm a molecule amongst this big moving body, but it's still a blessing to become, to get a chance to be in this thing with coming from my style, and coming from dramas, figuring out that I'm good at dramas and then doing this circle and ending up in Marvel or in Disney is like crazy.
Yeah. Now, have you seen all the Marvel movies?
No. Nope. But I've seen the great ones.
Yeah.
I just hope I'm in one of the good ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's so many of them. So, I just hope, and this has a certain style to it and it's going to be different. And I appreciate Marvel for taking this chance and stepping out on this limb. And, you will hope the audience do the same thing, just like they did with Lady in the Lake, to take a chance and, come see this story.
Yeah. So I got one last thing for you. You got a scene near the end of episode 7, the finale, where Natalie Portman's character, Maddie, comes to visit Slappy in jail. So you're doing a scene with Academy Award winner, Black Swan, Natalie Portman. Were you nervous, intimidated? What was it like shooting that scene with Natalie Portman?
No, it was crazy. I was that day. That was my first day.
Your first day on the shoot?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
I definitely was nervous going in. It was bigger than I thought. You know how you're nervous? You're like, oh, this is bigger than I thought. And I remember riding in on the van to the prison, and other prisoners looking at me like, who this was coming in? Right? And I'm out, and I didn't want to stay in my trailer because it's something jail about the trailer. So I'm walking on the field, and I see deer in this beautiful Baltimore like field.
Wow.
And then this van pull up, the prisoner guard van, and he's like, "What you doing over here?" And I'm like, "I'm supposed to be here." And he's like, "Oh, I'm supposed to be over here." I'm like, "This is where the God put me." He was nervous, and you know what I mean? And then it's just weird. I noticed that the jail looked like an elementary school where I'm from.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is really an institution. This is a real institution for real. And then I went in and but all this just was feeding my dualism, right? And I just had that mindset going in, and we went in and we did it. And, it came out great, but it was a thing that I was hoping for that didn't happen. And I was like, oh, okay, then you just got to roll. Because I was hoping they went tight on her first so I could just get as much rehearsal time. And they was like, no, big dog's gonna laugh. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was just trying to stay present and not in my head about, oh, I messed up or I did this or that. I was just like, any little thing I could look at and stay present, I would. Shoelace, telephone, just.
By the way,
had you met her?
You banged that telephone on the glass. Is that something that was in the script, or is that something that came in the moment?
Oh, it came in the moment. Yeah, it came in the moment.
Wow.
So a lot of stuff I do come in the moment, and in this series, and probably a lot of the series, and because by this time you stepped in the character.
Had you met her prior to that scene?
I did. I met her. I shook hands with her, and it was a meeting or two that we all sat in on. So yeah, I knew that she was a cool person. You know what I mean? But sitting across from her and acting across from her, it was to me, it was all based on our tech. We didn't rehearse before. So it was to me, I was like, all right, we're gonna dance. And so we got to get the first steps right. And then I could see how she moves, and then we could just go from there,
Nice. Well, listen, the show is great. We really, really loved it. Be sure to tell Alma for us that we are huge fans.
Thank you.
And when Wonder Man comes out, or whenever the next thing comes out, please come back to the show, will you?
All right.
Thank you very much, Byron. Appreciate it, man.
Thank y'all. Have a good day.
You too.
You too. There you have it, Byron Bowers there. And I really did love Lady in the Lake. I thought, and there's one moment at the end. I thought the finale was terrific. There's one moment near the end where Maddie, played by Natalie Portman, says to Cleo, "Do you feel like under different circumstances we could have been friends?" And Cleo says, "What possible circumstances would those be?" And it is true. They are separated by religion, by class, by race, and they never would have known each other had this murder not happened and had her disappearance not happened.
I think in some ways Maddie had a little bit of a delusional take on things because of, she moved out from her husband in this affluent neighborhood, moved into a predominantly Black neighborhood, was having an affair with a Black guy, the cop. And
Right.
I think in some ways, she felt that she was a part of that culture a little bit.
Yeah.
And
in the end, she wasn't.
She wasn't.
She couldn't be. Yeah. Really, really good show. Hey, if you are watching the podcast right now, please take a minute, subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, a review. I guess you can review us, I suppose, on YouTube.
Sure.
If it's a good review. And then on top of that, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, subscribe to the show. There, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a review as well. Sue, it is great seeing you, and we will see everybody next time on the Culture Pop Podcast.